Hello and welcome to Boston Tea Table. I am VA Boston and this is my review of The Dark is Rising sequence by Susan Cooper. For those who might want it, I have included in the description box below a section warning about what content I can remember that some might find objectionable. Just know that it will probably contain spoilers. Abstract. A good, if at times challenging read. This series combines Arthurian legend, good prose, interesting plots, and likable characters into a strong series of children's literature. There are some elements, like certain ideas, I have issue with, and the ending wasn't quite to my taste, but overall I really enjoyed this series. The audiobooks are also very good, if that is more to your preference. And on to the main review. The Dark is Rising sequence is a 5-book children's fantasy series by Susan Cooper set in Great Britain during the late 20th century. At the series' start, 3 siblings stumble upon an ancient map to the location of the legendary Grail of Arthurian myth. Helped by their mysterious great-uncle Merriman, the children set out to find the Grail before it falls into evil hands, a hunt that begins the final confrontation between the forces of the light, led by the immortal Old Ones, and the Army of the Dark, a confrontation across not just land, but across time as well. The series is well written. Though at times convoluted or complex, the prose possesses a level of quality that can be difficult to find in books for children. It might be challenging at first, but it is worth the effort to rise to that challenge. There are, though, several names and phrases, mostly Welsh, that will be a hurdle to most readers, especially in later books. On this front, the audiobooks for this series hold a distinct advantage. They are excellent recordings if you are more inclined to listening, if you don't want to deal with pronunciation, or if you just want a good series for the car. The stories themselves are interesting, each one involving a magical artifact that the light must find before the dark can, but with enough variety of events that none of the stories feels like a copy. Also, while the pursuit of these artifacts is important, they are not always the main objective of the plot. Besides the artifacts, there are 2 other main threads binding the narrative together: the Arthurian myths and a prophecy revealed in the 2nd book of the series, which work together within the story to create an engaging narrative twining together the past and present. From how she uses these different threads, it's clear Cooper thought out this story from early on, giving the narrative a strong sense of purpose and direction. Unfortunately, even with that strength, the ending left me with mixed feelings. It's bittersweet, which is fitting, but it's a bit too on the bitter end for my preferences. There are also some narrative threads left hanging which contributed to my mild dissatisfaction. Still, the story progresses well, and Cooper largely pulls things together by the end, so even with those issues, the story as a whole is still enjoyable. And the heroes are also enjoyable. No one is fully fleshed out, and the children at times act a bit too mature, flaws that are often necessary for children's literature, but each one of the protagonists, from the 3 Drew children, to Will, to Merriman, to Bronn, to even several side characters, are distinct from each other. What's more, each character is influenced and in part defined by his or her familial and adult relationships. Traditional families are portrayed positively and provide support and motivation for the children, even when not aware of the greater scope of events. Furthermore, there are adults like Merriman and later John Rowlands who do what they can to guide the children towards maturity. This prevalence of healthy relationships between children, their families, and adult mentors makes this series stand out compared to so many books aimed at older children and young teens. And this series is for older children and onward. Will Stanton, the overall main character, is almost 11 when introduced, but the themes and content mature as the story progresses. Some scenes and imagery could also frighten younger children, especially in the 2nd book, and there are some concepts and issues Cooper presents, again most notably in Book 2 but also in Book 4, that parents might want to read ahead of time in case they want to discuss them afterwards with their children. For the most part, though, the themes and ideas are good and well done, if occasionally too didactic. The high point of these themes, and really for all other elements, prose, characters, plot, etc., is Book 4, The Grey King. Compared to the other stories, this has some of the most evocative prose, some of the most engaging events and themes, and some of the best character interactions. The character Braun in particular is very charismatic in his oddity, his distance, his pride, and yet his relatability and sympathetic story. Also, more than any of the other stories, The Grey King captures atmosphere, drawing the reader into the land of Wales and into legends sleeping within the mountains and valleys, the roads and rivers, and within the characters themselves. Like with the Prydain Chronicles, I will eventually reread this series and go through the books one by one so I can touch on more topics, like how Cooper handles time travel, and go into more detail. And when I do, perhaps I will re-evaluate some of the things I have said here, but for now, my position is as such. This is a very good book series, a very good children's series, and a very good audiobook series. Whether you prefer listening or reading, it is well worth experiencing. This has been my review of The Dark is Rising sequence. Thank you for listening.